Accidental Love by Gary Soto. Chapter 4. Hamilton Magnet High School was located far up north where the Sierras peaked through the valley smog. Marissa was unfamiliar with her new school, though she suspected the most of the students came from homes where money grew on trees. But she had to admit that she might be wrong. Maybe those money trees were bare and fruitless, and maybe the students had their own fears. What was certain about Hamilton Magnet? Every fall, when Washington played Hamilton in football, her former high school crushed them under their grinding cleats. Her new school was also smaller, 900 students, and wider. Washington was mostly Latinos and blacks, with whites and Asians who acted Latino and black. The shaved head Asians with bluish skulls were holler in the hallways, arms flailing. Chale, sapo, I can't lend you mi rantla for the party. Mi jefa took me Miss Laves. The transfer took only 3 days, 1 day to convince her father, and 2 for her high school to do the paperwork for the transfer, by which time Alicia was out of hospital. Now Alicia was home in bed and with get well balloons that floated to the bedroom ceiling, but in time would sink down to the floor. There was a problem between the friends. Alicia had found out about her fight with Roberto at the hospital. Marissa couldn't believe Alicia was mad about that. Didn't she realize Marissa had been defending her? Please call, Marissa had whined, but Alicia didn't call. Marissa's aunt Sarah was about the transfer. She lived only 3 blocks away from Hamilton Magnet and looked forward to her favorite niece staying over some nights. Her aunt was a nurse and wanted to encourage Marissa toward the profession. Marissa, was out of respect, could only nod when she spoke to her aunt on the telephone and respond lamely. Sounds fun, Thea. Sounds like you can make a lot of money. In truth, Marissa was leery of hospitals. Isn't that where you went when you were hurt or ready to die or get into a fight? She had only to think of that two-faced Roberto. Then she remembered Renee. Maybe that's where you can meet. She gulped at this. A boy. The first morning at her new school, Marissa maneuvered herself down the hallway searching for Renee. She was nervous, and any other day, would have snarled when a boy bumped her backpack. But this new school was unfamiliar territory. Not the place to holler. Watch where you're going, Pendejo. She spied Renee tying his shoes in the courtyard. She made a face at the white socks. She would have to talk to him about those socks and the high water pants. She would have to tell him that he had to dress with the times. Hi, Renee, she said as she approached him. Her voice, she sensed, was flat. She had been happy to get Renee's call 3 nights ago, but now was different. He stood up, waving an arm, bearing an oversized watch. It's good to see you, Marissa, Renee said brightly. How'd you like it here? How do you like it here? I guess it's okay, but I don't know anybody except you. 900 students, he gave a honking laugh and said, 901 students now. Renee, are you being funny? He nodded and honked his laughter again. Marissa scanned the schoolyard. She told him that she had an appointment with a counselor before classes. Hope you get Mr. Laird. He's real nice. Marissa noticed his pant cuffs caught in his sock. Oh, God, she moaned, but admonished herself for thinking of the N word. Nerd. Renee, we're going to have to talk, Marissa remarked as she nudged him away. But first, I'm hungry. Her eye had caught sight of a snack bar with a fluttering neon light. Talk about what? He produced a cleanly folded handkerchief from his pocket and began to clean his eyeglasses. His eyes were beady as a salamander's. Stuff, she answered, vaguely aware that at the time wasn't right. She prodded him toward a snack bar where she eyed the donuts and the array of pies, apple being her favorite, though chocolate was way up there too. Her gaze floated up to the banana speckled with dark spots. She debated whether to enjoy a true sugar rush or a much healthier banana. Last night, while eating a bowl of ice cream, her last, she promised, she had decided to stay away from cookies, ice cream, sodas, potato chips. She was determined to shed a few pounds. Give me, she said to the student behind the screen window, give me an apple. No, no, banana. She turned to Renee. You gonna get anything? He wagged his head. No, his eyeglasses were crooked on his face. That's 60 cents, the girl said through the screen. Marissa let 6 dimes roll from her palm and slapped one before it fell off the counter. The two sat on a bench away from the milling brown crowd. She peeled back her banana and offered a bite to Renee. Oh, I had some in my Wheaties, he said. Marissa laughed and nearly dropped the banana. She was thinking, he eats Wheaties, the breakfast of champions? Then how come he's so weak? But she admonished herself for the second time within 10 minutes. She was no better than he, a 14-year-old girl with her own problems. She didn't want to be stuck up. What's funny? Renee asked. Nothing's funny, Marissa finally answered after clearing her throat of the first bite of overripe and mushy banana. It's just kind of weird being here. You'll like it, Renee said. I'm glad you're here. There's lots to do. What do you mean? Like clubs? You belong to a club? Marissa had never belonged to anything except Girl Scouts for a month. She would have stayed longer, except she had eaten 6 boxes of Girl Scout cookies and didn't have the means to pay for them. The Thin Mints were her irresistible. Yeah, I belong to the science club. Marissa stuffed a banana in her mouth to keep from laughing. And chess team plus thespians, though I have never been in a play, but I like to read them in bed. I used to be able to recite some of Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings I learned it when I was in 6th grade. Marissa let the banana stay in her mouth. Her stomach was convulsing with laughter. Are you okay? Renee asked as he jumped to his feet. I know the Heimlich maneuver. He moved behind the bench and embarrassed Marissa, who couldn't help but think, he's so cute. He's trying to save my life. Then there came a shout from one of the four girls passing by. Is that your girlfriend? Marissa broke out of Renee's grip. She had already swallowed a mouthful of banana, and her mind was assembling words to throw like daggers at the girl who had taunted her. No, taunted Renee. But she thought better of the situation. This was her first day. Plus, she had promised herself not to get so angry. Are you better now? Renee asked. I took first aid class at the YMCA now and know quite a bit about saving people. He said that this with his arm hooked in hers. Marissa met with Mr. Laird, a counselor who sat behind a paper-cluttered desk, pulverizing one breath mint after another as he examined her transfer papers. He offered a mint to Marissa, who declined. Your test scores are good, he reported as he closed her file, but your grades from last school. He sighed and tapped his pencil against her file. I know, she agreed. She had been examining some of his awards on the wall behind her, but now her attention was leveled at him. But I'm going to do better here. I want you to, he remarked. I want to, too. She was serious. Good, he said, and stood up and pulling a sweater off her hat rack, he walked her to the American history class and said, let's have lunch together later. Marissa was baffled. Lunch with an adult? But she accepted his offer and held her breath as she entered the new class. American history was not unlike history class at our old school, except most of the students were listening. When the bell rang, Mrs. Webb called Marissa to stay behind. Did I do something? Marissa asked as she approached her teacher's desk. No, Mrs. Webb said, with a kind radiance in her eyes. I just want to welcome you to our school. If you have any questions about the material, please see me. Mrs. Webb pulled a book from the shelf, wrote the identification number in a roll book, and handed a heavy tome to Marissa. She informed her that they were on chapter 4. Thank you, Marissa said in a near whisper. Mrs. Webb patted Marissa's shoulder. I'm so glad you're here. By third period, Marissa had learned the names of some of her classmates. She thought she would be treated like an outsider, a chola girl with brown lipstick, but she was wrong. She was glad to be wrong. At lunch, she found Renee sitting in the cafeteria where they had agreed to meet. I bought you milk, Renee said. It's chocolate. You like chocolate, don't you? Renee, are you trying to spoil me? She could chug chocolate milk all day. I was in such a rush that I forgot my lunch. I could share mine, and if I wanted to spoil you, I would have bought you 2 chocolates. He laughed like someone in the fit of an asthmatic attack. They went outside to sit on the grass and drink their cartons of milk. Renee offered her one of his 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Marissa took the sandwich from him while staring at his white sock. She debated whether she should tell him or just shut her big mouth. She almost got the nerve to pull off his shoes and strip him off his socks. In the end, she decided to stuff her mouth with a large bite of sandwich and to say nothing. Renee brought her out a Ziploc bag full of animal crackers. She took the hippopotamus and nibbled at its stubbly feet. You want to try to out for the play? Renee asked. He was eating an animal cracker. What's play? The entire hippo was settled in her back molars. Her tongue began to work it loose. Romeo and Juliet. She almost spat out the cookie. You're joking, Marissa asked. No, I'm not. Auditions are this week. I've never been in a play. Marissa chuckled. She fit another animal cookie in her mouth and asked, what am I going to try to be, Juliet? In case you haven't noticed, without hesitation, she pinched at her layer of fat. You don't have to try out for her. Here, he stopped. You can try out for the nurse. Who's the nurse? Renee plucked a handful of grass and tossed it into the air. It's a real meaty part. You have to learn about lots of lines, but I can help. Marissa was touched and caught some of the grass as it came down. She slapped the grass from her palms and scratched her nose. Or there's a musician. Renee raised his arms and pretended to be playing violin. Do you play violin? She asked. I used to. Now I'm concentrating on piano and I have a recorder, but I hardly ever practice. She scooted closer to him. She peeled a crumb of animal cracker off from his cheek and wondered why she felt so comfortable with a voice she hardly knew. Renee took her hand. His thumb rubbed her thumb. A penny for your thoughts, he said. She was thinking, a boy had never called me before. A boy is feeding me cookies on a damp lawn. A boy is wearing white socks, and I refuse to call him a nerd or anything mean. What's going on with me? Yeah, she answered, and would have followed her simple yeah with more explanation, except that she caught sight of Mr. Laird, the counselor, walking toward them. Dang, she muttered, I forgot I was supposed to have lunch with him. Renee released Maurice's hand. He stood up, swiping at the grass on the back of his pants, and announced, Sir, I have good news. The good news was that Marissa and Renee were going to audition for the parts of Romeo and Juliet. She lay in bed that night, glowing with happiness. She had the urge to call Alicia and tell her about Renee, but she had held back because of Roberto. Alicia, heartbroken and now saddled with crutches, was hurting in a big way. Plus, Alicia was still acting mad at her. Was it because Marissa had knocked her boyfriend around? Or was she upset? Or was it sad that she had moved to new school? I'm going to lose weight, she muttered. I really, really, really mean it. For dinner, she had second helpings and only 2 dinky scoops of ice cream, though she savored the flavor by keeping the spoon in her mouth like a thermometer. We're like Romeo and Juliet, she told herself with a chuckle. She pressed a pillow into her face, and through the darkness could see Renee with his white socks and his bent eyeglasses on his cute face. She could help him change, and yeah, I know, she thought, he could also help her change. This is the end to Chapter 4, Accidental Love.